Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more dynamic second half. Today, friends, if you find us on any podcast platform, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. If you're on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any more of my amazing guests. Today, we are going to be talking about Grittitude. My guest is passionate about bringing the gritty mindset and attitude to people. A lot of people feel like they're stuck in where they're at in life, and my guest wants to help you understand that you can write your own story. My guest is Jacqui Flavell. She's a life coach, a mentor, and the co-author of Grittitude, Choose Your Own Life Story. Jacqui, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to talk to you.
Yes, as you can tell, my friend Jacqui is talking to me from England. And so she has had a long day. She is with us in her evening. And I want to thank you so much for sitting down after a long, busy day to have this conversation about Grittitude with me.
It's a pleasure. The sun's just starting to set out of my window.
We had this whole time change thing, right? There's this point where we time change and then you haven't time changed yet. And so luckily we made this thing happen without being completely confused. My whole time thing has always been an issue in my life. So I did want to talk to you though, with the Grittitude it took for us to even get to this point. Tell me a little bit about your mission and your message and why Grittitude.
Well, Kay and I started, her business is called Gritty People, and we started that about 10 years ago. And it was all about discovering your grit. And grit is about that determination to succeed. So this idea that it's not just about talent, it's not something you're born with, it's something that you can develop, and that people that are successful are the people that just keep going and keep trying and being gritty. And we truly believe that everyone can build their grittiness and their Grittitude. And we wanted to make it accessible to as many people as possible. So we've gone from delivering workshops and working in quite a corporate field to writing the book to make it accessible to as many people as we could. So yeah, that's what Grittitude is all about, having a gritty attitude. We made the word up, so you won't be able to find it in the dictionary. But yeah, we'll be very happy if one day you can just find the word Grittitude in the dictionary.
It's totally possible. And I love the word because it really helps you to, in one look, understand sort of what we're heading for. And that grittiness, I think, is a powerful way of looking at, because we use the word like resilience, right? Just really getting stuck into something and really digging into something. But I love the idea of being gritty. Let's talk a little bit about what grittiness looks like in a day-to-day life or in somebody's, you're talking about somebody who feels stuck. And now we really want to get unstuck or even realize that we can get unstuck. How does this Grittitude really help?
Yeah, well, the subtitle of the book is Choose Your Own Life Story. So the real theme of the book is about choice. And I think it's quite easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if you're not happy in your life, that it's because of your job or your boss or your family or the weather or the economy, something outside of you. And the problem is all the time that the problem's outside of you, then you have very little control to change it. So though it's quite a hard thing to take on initially, but if you decide to accept that maybe the problem's you, maybe you can change your attitude. While that sounds quite harsh, it's actually amazing, because if the problem is you, then you can fix it. The control to change it is all with you. And so that's why we call one of the chapters is Cold Hard Truths, and that's sort of where we're trying to introduce this idea that maybe if it's terrible weather, it's a great example. If it's terrible weather, and in Britain we always talk about the weather, we complain about the weather all the time. It's too hot, it's too cold. If we have 10 seconds of snow, then all the roads are gridlocked. So everyone complains about the weather all the time. So people can blame a rainy day for spoiling their day. Whereas, you can just grab an umbrella, put your Wellington boots on and have a brilliant day in the rain. So you might not be able to change the weather, but you can change your attitude to it. And that's the message that we want people to get.
You're right, though, Jacqui. When we have to turn and face our own culpability in our life, right? Because I was just talking to a coaching client this week, and I was using the example of a ship with a rudder. The rudder is a very small part of a large ship, but that rudder literally drives the direction of that ship. And it changes the direction of the ship by degrees, right? And I feel like this idea of Grittitude is like a rudder that is by degrees leading you somewhere, right? And by taking personal responsibility and applying a principle like Grittitude, I'm going to use my rudder in the most positive and I guess pleasing direction, rather than, like you said, looking at everything as outside of myself. So I'm the victim and I can't do anything about it, right? So we've set our rudder for the rocks when we think that way, right?
And a lot of people haven't even really decided where it is they're sailing towards. There'll be people that can tell you in quite detail why they don't want to be where they are, when they're not happy with the boat that they're in, but if you actually say, well, what do you want instead? Where do you want to be? Very often that question is met with a pause, because people haven't really, they've spent so much time focusing on what they don't want that they haven't really thought about, well, what is it I want? And very often half of the way of achieving a goal is setting the goal in the first place. If you haven't chosen a goal, you've got no hope of ever achieving it.
Yes, that's a good point. And how do we help people identify what it is they want? Because before we hit record, you and I agreed that as coaches, we believe that people have the answers inside of them. Yeah. So let's talk about helping someone's eyes open to that they actually probably do know somewhere deep inside where it is they want to go in life.
Yeah. Well, often a really great way of getting people to start thinking about what they're passionate about, if it's not something that they immediately have at the front of their mind, is to look back over your life and to think, well, okay, well, think back to when you were a child. What were the things that really excited you then? Was it drawing and painting? Was it just being out in the open air? What was it that sort of lit you up when you were a child? Because though as we become an adult, we often forget to remember what it was like to be a child. Usually our passions are still there, hidden within us. So again, one of the chapters is talking about, that rediscovering what's your purpose and what's what drives you, what makes you feel excited in the morning. And a really powerful way of being able to help you work that out is to something like, well, when I was a child, what did I enjoy? When I was a young adult, what did I enjoy? And almost then start to spot the common threads, because often there are more commonality across that than you might think. When I was a child, I absolutely loved to dance. I loved to be on the stage, but I didn't have the talent for that to be sort of like a career that I went into. And then like years later, I find myself like teaching aerobics with a headset mic on, and I'm thinking, well, I have a stage, I'm performing, and now I love to run seminars and workshops. And so those three things are entirely different. It just shows that I'm one of those people who wants to share something. I want to, have an audience who can listen to me speak, be center of attention. but yeah, it just shows that very often there's more of a common thread between all of those passions, and you might be able to think, okay, well, now I'm at this stage in my life, how do I still get that feeling that makes me feel really excited?
I think it's fascinating to take time to reflect on what's been in our lives, because like you said, we live our adult lives and we get into this responsibility role, right? You've got to earn the money, you've got to raise the family, you've got to build the business, it's all have to, shoulds. You're like living this life that it's not necessarily not fulfilling, because for some people it's very fulfilling. But for some people, it reaches its like end of fulfillment, right? It's often midlife, wouldn't you agree? We get to this point where you're like, wait a minute, this isn't where I want my ship to end up, if you will. And
sometimes it's because it's got to its natural end, or sometimes it's because we've had that shift. So if you're if your main purpose in your life has been your children and raising your family, and then suddenly the children go off to university, go off to college, leave home, get married, go and live overseas, then suddenly you can find yourself thinking that you have no purpose, and it's only that the thing that was your purpose is now moved on, and you just need to find a new one. You need to say, okay, well, what's next for me? Now my kids don't need me in that same way anymore. What's still going to drive me forward? And it's about getting into that next chapter rather than sort of sitting looking back and and wishing to have it how it used to be.
Yeah. Some women that I talk to, they really are befuddled because they've lived a life of serving others to a degree that they don't know. Like they literally feel like they have no idea. And I'll start asking them questions, and it's fun to have those conversations, isn't it? And it's fun to think about what brings you joy, because I feel like fundamentally finding something creative to do is a good starting point for a lot of people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because I think it just taps into that childhood thing. Kids just love to create. You can buy them the most expensive toy in the shop, but give them a cardboard box and a wooden spoon and they're often happier. And I think that never goes away, that desire to play and to still play, to find how can you still bring play into your life that can often just be really serious. So
that's a good point, bringing play into your lives, like maybe just going out and doing something, being curious about that activity, trying to remember. Because I think maybe that's partly what it is. It's not a not knowing, it's I got to remember, right?
And I think another thing that tends to happen as we get older is we are less sort of like able to take a risk. We're more risk averse. We're more sort of like fear of failing. Children don't give up when they when they don't do something right the first time. They just keep going. And yet as adults, I think we sort of try something and then you think, oh, if I'm not very good at that, then I give up. I'm terrible at craft. You give me any craft project to do, and in my head I can totally picture how this is going to wind up, and I am awful at it, but I can really enjoy it. It just means that what I end up with is, rather than ending up with some beautiful item that I can put on a shelf, I end up with something that I can put in the bin, but I can quite enjoy the afternoon of playing and creating and then throwing it away and just buying one on Amazon that was better.
What's so great about that though? Isn't it about, especially thinking about even in terms of Grittitude, it's about the process that we're going through. It's so easy to get caught up in like getting there, getting it accomplished, checking it off the list. And I think what you're talking about is more of a shift in how we approach things.
Yeah. It's all about changing your mindset. And so in the book there's 18 chapters and there's 18 gritty attitudes. They're gritty beliefs, and they're the beliefs that if we say, we're not saying that they're necessarily true, but if you choose to behave as if they're true, it will give you more choice. So things like, you choose to believe that that state is everything, or you believe in the courage to fail. So things it's just if you really embodied that mindset that you have the courage to fail, that really for most things that we try, there's much less risk than we think. Maybe if your next thing you try like hand gliding or something, there's some risk there, but I'm sure there'll be someone who's checking that all of the safety harnesses on and everything's okay. And yeah, so I think we learn to sort of like fear this failure quite early on, and actually how much fun is there in going for a walk and getting a bit lost and then finding somewhere that you've never been before. And so having that mindset that it's all about just being curious, as you said, and having fun.
I think that's where we live in a day and age where you can watch YouTube. There's so many ways that you can learn and try something fairly low risk without, there's all these free challenges or, books or workshops. And so I think sometimes I talked to a gal who signed up for a class. She was retired. and she didn't realize it was an acting class. I don't know what she thought it was, but it was like improv acting. And she would have never in a million years put herself in a class like that. Well, she became an actress because she loved it. And her mother had passed and her father was lonely. So she brought him along and they ended up doing it together. Like it was a complete like misunderstanding in her mind of what she was signing up for, and ended up turning it into a career. And I think maybe that Grittitude is to intentionally push yourself out of your comfort zone, like just jump as far out of it as you can and see what comes of it.
Yeah, I mean, by definition, all new experiences, all new challenges mean having a bit of discomfort. Our comfort zone is doing things that we know that we already know how to do and doesn't stretch us and feels really safe and lovely. But as the world moves on, if we don't keep trying new things, actually our comfort zone gets smaller. And so, for some people, and everyone's comfort zone is different. So for one person, going to acting class would sound like a really easy thing to do. And for somebody else, I think even just to walk into a room full of people I don't know sounds scary. So it's those little challenges that just, make you have new experiences. Because we very often restrict what we believe that we can do. And we talk in the book a lot about the stories that we tell ourselves. And we are making up stories, and we get them from early childhood of, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at sports, or I'm no good at craft, or I couldn't start my own business, or I'll never be a leader, or I'm not any good as a mom. So all these like things stories that we tell ourselves over and over, they sink in and we really believe them. And just by changing that language, changing the story, and in fact we make the joke in the book that yes, you can buy those little wooden signs with a bit of string that says, live, laugh, love, but what's the alternative? Telling yourself to sort of like cry and sit and be miserable, and because though they sound like they're cheesy, but they are true, they work. If every day you say to yourself, I'm amazing, I'm brilliant, then let that sink in, rather than telling yourself, don't do it, you're no good, you'll never be successful, keep your world small, stay safe, stay home. Those things sink in.
There's such power to the stories that we tell ourselves. There's such power to the beliefs that we hold. And I find that many people don't even realize the things they say to and about themselves and those fundamental beliefs that they're basically living their life by.
Like you say, that we believe that what we're telling ourselves is true. And certainly, in the coaching world, we refer to them as limiting beliefs. I'm sure you've talked about limiting beliefs before. And the way to challenge them is really simple, because it's just about asking questions. And that's the other theme in the book. There's nearly 500 questions in the book. And they're questions that some of them are just questions that you've stopped asking yourself. And so starting with that very simple question of, what do you want instead? Where do you want to go? What do you want? What does make you happy? And then when you have those thoughts that are saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not confident enough, I can't have what I want, it's just challenging that belief of saying, well, how do you know? Have you tried? What if you did try? Who said that you can't achieve it? Where did that come from? Was it something a teacher said at school, or a parent said when you were a child that you've just taken on board and have never challenged? So challenging yourself with the questions and finding different answers is actually the magic to changing those beliefs that aren't serving you well.
What's interesting, I've done this with people, especially like on an initial consultation. I'll ask them some questions, just write down their answers. But often people will make, like you're talking about, real definitive statements. I am statements, right? Or my sister is, but I'm not. My mom said, I try to capture them and write them down. And every single time people will say, where did you get that from? And I say, it came out of your mouth. Yeah. It's like we don't even always understand the things that we have agreed to. And that's what you're talking about, right? Someone said it. and we agreed. And as children, who disagrees with the authorities in their life?
Okay.
We don't. And
Yeah.
so we don't even realize how much, and our brains are so incredible that if we have a belief, it goes, oh, this is what's true. So I'll find evidence
We
to
like to be
support
right,
it.
yeah. So we want to prove ourselves right. We don't want to prove ourselves wrong. So yeah, absolutely. Every time something happens that supports that belief, it just gets stronger and stronger. And almost if something happens that counteracts it, you think, oh, well, that was just fluke, that didn't count, that wasn't, that was just luck. So yeah, it's getting people to really think, well, what's the evidence for having that mindset, and is that mindset helping you? Is it helping you have the life you want?
Mm-hmm. It's so true, right? Oh, that was a one-off, like it could never happen again. But it's like, well, if you think about the odds, right? The odds of something going this way or that way in a lot of situations is equal. It's what we choose to agree with that will tip the scale toward or away from something, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's another one of the mindsets we talk about in the book, that we're doing the best that we can with the resources that we've got, so any decision you make, you're making it for the right and the best reason at the time. And it's just about learning and thinking, okay, well, actually next time, how can I have more tools? How can I make a different decision? And sometimes it gets messy, and that's the trouble, is once you, if it's a new concept to you that actually you're doing this to yourself, it's you, first of all, that can be quite hard to hear, and then it's empowering because you go, okay, it's all me, that's great, I can change it. But then there are days when I know that I feel like if I'm feeling miserable, if I'm feeling low, there's a little voice in my head saying, you're just doing this to yourself. You could just put on a song that will change your mood, or you could just dance around the kitchen and change it. And so I have a little argument with myself then, going, oh, I just want to be miserable just for a few minutes, it's okay. And then I'll get out of it, because once you know that you can just change your state, and again, it's another thing we talk about a lot in the book, is state management. And everyone knows that you can be feeling really, really down, really low, and a friend call and it immediately changes. Or the other way around, you can be feeling really positive and a song comes on the radio that has a sad memory for you and you feel low, so your state can change in seconds. So we suggest that people think, well, what are the things that I know for sure will put me in that good mood? What is that playlist that I could just put on in the morning that means when I get into the shower, I'm already dancing and having a fun morning? If I'm feeling low, what is it that's going to work for me? Is it going for a walk? Is it calling a friend? Is it just sitting with a cup of tea? What is it that's can instantly change your state and put you in a different frame of mind, and get you out of those negative thoughts?
There's such wisdom in the idea of state management, and it's empowering to recognize that I'm not at the mercy of anything or anyone. Not really. I mean, we might be in situations where we have to put up with someone that we're not crazy about, but that's not the same as being at the mercy of them in what we choose to believe and how we choose to live our lives.
Yeah. And as soon as you start changing the language, and you change, even if you're only changing it in your head, from this idea of going, you've made me feel sad, you've made me feel, and it's like, well, have they made you, or did they do something and then you chose to react that way? Could they have behaved that way and you still have chosen to react differently? They didn't make you anything. And language is a huge thing. So taking out the word sort of but out of your language, and saying, instead of saying, oh, I can't, I could do that, but, well, what if you take out that but and you put in and, well, I could do that and maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Putting in that word yet at the end of a sentence where you said I can't do it, I can't do it becomes I can't do it yet. And it just tells your brain that there's possibility, and it just totally changes how you approach things. And in fact, you said earlier about all the shoulds that we have in our lives. We're changing I should go to the gym to I could go to the gym, to I might go to the gym, I will go. It's all like that negotiating of turning I should to and it's about changing, these have tos to possibilities, again, that makes you feel that you've got choice. And so again, we're back to that theme of I'm choosing to do it. I'm not being forced to do it. No one's making me do it.
Mm-hmm. And I think for some personalities, to just jump from I will from I can't is too big of a leap, right? It's that by degrees that we were talking about. For some personalities, you have to do just a little shift in how you say it, so your brain gets on board, right? Otherwise, it's like a battle royal just to do the thing. And you know how I don't know if you do this, but you're like, really, that once you do it, you're like, why did that take me so long? Like, seriously, that was not that big of a deal. But to your point, we're in a battle with our beliefs and our mindsets, and our mind is trying to keep us safe. And if something feels unsafe, not like mortally unsafe, but even emotionally unsafe, I love the idea of being like, well, we'll just pick one word and we'll just move it to the left a little bit and we'll play with that for a while. Gain a little confidence and courage around the idea that at some point, right?
And you hit on something else that's really important there, that this idea that when you don't do the thing that you deep down you want to do, actually there's a positive reason that you're keeping yourself safe. And so it's another one of the beliefs in the book, is this idea that there's a positive reason for all behavior. So when even when you're doing something negative, like if you want to give up smoking, for example, and you might absolutely consciously know that smoking's bad for your health, but the reason you're doing it is because you've got that mindset that it makes you feel calm, it makes you relax. So everything we do, even the really negative behaviors, we do because at some level they're fulfilling a positive purpose for us. And once we identify that, then you can find a different way of getting it. So if I want to feel calm, well, maybe I could just go for a walk, or I could go and have a bath, or I could do something else that will give me the same outcome, but with a different behavior.
That's really smart. It's like you're tricking yourself, basically.
Yeah, but that's all we're doing all the time. But if we're going to trick ourselves and tell ourselves nonsense all the time, let's start telling ourselves good stuff and trick ourselves that we can do things, rather than tricking ourselves that we can't and that we're rubbish and we shouldn't try and we should just stay home.
I love the question, what can I do? Like, if I'm telling myself I can't do something for whatever reason, okay, well, what can I do? Maybe it's like peeking at something instead of looking fully at it.
Yeah, exactly. How can I sneak up on it without even noticing? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We're not suggesting that that this is something you can totally change overnight. And saying one of the chapters is called the messy bit in the middle, where you sort of like start changing things and you look and think, oh, why did I even start this? I've just created more mess. But when you're in that messy bit in the middle, it just shows that you're making progress, you're moving forward, and you're not where you were. You're somewhere new now, and it's unfamiliar, and then that's okay. You can keep going forward.
That's the hard part, isn't it? When we're in the middle like that, perspective is a challenge. And how can people gain perspective when they are in that messy middle? What are some tools to help them lift their chin up and see what's actually been accomplished?
Well, I think it's two things. First of all, it's lifting your head up and looking back and thinking, actually, I might be in this messy bit, but look how far I've already come. But the main thing is looking forward and remembering where it is you're trying to get there and why you want to get there. Remembering that sort of like what lights you up, and thinking, okay, this is just some of the steps in the middle. I'll get there. And actually remembering that when you're at that messy point, you don't have to do it all on your own. How often, if you ring a friend and say, I'm in a mess, who are the people that will say, right, I'll be there, give me 5 minutes, I'm getting in the car, I'll be there to support you. Because it's another thing that we can be pretty bad at asking for help when we need it. And it's such a double whammy, because actually most of us love being asked to help. So when you ask for help, you're getting the help, but you're also giving somebody else the joy of knowing that they've helped their friend. I had that conversation with someone recently, actually. They said, oh, I don't want to ask for help. And I just said, well, I said, how do you think your friends feel knowing that you're struggling and that they can't help you? And, and it was a real moment where she shifted that thinking, actually, I'm preventing my friends from having that lovely feeling of knowing that they've come in and supported me and helped me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard people say, like, I hope I'm being as good of a friend to you as you're being to me, or I hope I'm helping you as much as you're helping me. So that confirms what you're saying. And I think for the most part, when I help someone, I don't always understand the magnitude of that help. It may not feel as big to me as it does to the person receiving the help. So I think perspective is an important part of the conversation.
Yeah. Just knowing you've got someone on your side is often help enough. You almost don't even need to do anything. You just need to know that you've got somebody there that's rooting for you.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about giving your friends an opportunity to help you, because, this whole idea of Grittitude and digging in, if we don't lean into community, if we don't lean into help, we can easily burn out. We can easily be discouraged. There's an important part of, we think Grittitude, I think, sounds like something you do all by yourself, right? How does community figure in with this?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because it does sort of have a little bit of that sort of connotations of digging in and having to sort of like push on and power on through on your own, and this being gritty and being determined.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when you're doing it with other people, for other people, and you'd never say something negative to a friend like you say to yourself. So even like treating yourself like you treat your friend, if your friend called you and said, oh, I've got a job interview tomorrow and I'm really nervous, you wouldn't say, oh yeah, you'll be rubbish at that, I wouldn't even try. You'd say, oh, you'll be great, just be yourself. And yet we'll say to ourselves, oh, I've got that interview tomorrow, I'm going to be rubbish, I'm going to be nervous. So talking to yourself like you'll talk to your friend. And and even asking your friends to say, what is it, why do you like hanging out with me, what is it that I bring to you? And then your friends will tell you about how brilliant it is to have someone who listens and trusts. And like you say, often it feels like you're not doing very much, because just by being there for somebody can often be the most important thing.
Yeah. I don't know what it is that makes us resist asking for help. I think one of the challenges that I've had, and maybe listeners can relate to this, is, if you're the person that everyone comes to, I'm not always great at even recognizing that I need help. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I'm just busy doing other things and not being in tune with, what do I actually need?
Taking time to just pause and think is just so important. My own personal coaching business is called Second Cup of Tea, and the name came from this idea that one cup of tea might not do it. You need the time it takes to sit down with 2 cups of tea and just take time to think, reflect, and just give yourself that permission to just stop and think, am I where I want to be? What have I got in my life that I want more of? What have I got in my life that needs to change now? Who else can help me with that? Who can support me? And just for most things, we are just busy and we just keep going and we just keep pedaling, and we don't notice that we've just not stopped to just sit and relax. And I think that's why coaching works in the main. It's just about taking the time, because it means that someone else is forcing you to just stop for a bit and just answer the questions that you avoid yourself. And we know with the book, you could sit and read the book all the way through and just not really do the work. But if actually, when you come across a question that makes you think, yeah, actually I hadn't thought about that for a while, almost what we want you to do is close the book, put it down for a minute, and then I'm just gonna have a little think about that. What do I want the next 12 months to look like? What do I want to achieve? What don't I want in my life anymore? And just to take that time for yourself.
It's such a necessary habit, but can it be so uncomfortable to get quiet? There's Grittitude in quiet, I think.
Completely. If you're quiet, you'll hear your own thoughts, and oh my goodness, what might that lead to?
I think this is where a practice like journaling is helpful. Getting those thoughts out of our head so we can see them, so they become concrete. Because I feel like, they're so familiar to us.
Yeah.
It's like a breeze in our mind. It's just blowing through and we just accept it. And we don't really know the impact that some of these things that we're thinking and believing are having on our greater, the greater impact it's having on the life that we're actually living and our relationships, the people that we choose to be in relationship with. It's incredible.
I mean, it's such a cliche, this idea of that self-care isn't selfish, but it's still so true. This idea that, how can you be there for your family, for your friends, for your loved ones, if you're not looking after yourself? And often just taking, 10, 15 minutes of just finding a quiet spot and just saying, I'm just going to take some time for myself. I'm going to have that cup of tea. I'm going to have that bath. I'm going to get my journal. And I'm the same. I love to journal. I just love, and I never read it back. It never makes any sense. I just open at any page and I just let the thoughts spill out. And it's almost like I can go, oh, I can breathe now because it's all out of my head. It's gone. It's out on paper. And even like it's why coaching works as well, because saying it out loud or writing it down is very different from just keeping it on the inside and letting it go round and round. It almost seems like that's the least likely way of ever solving anything, is letting it go round. It's almost got to come out either written or speaking it, and then you hear yourself saying things and almost can surprise yourself and think, well, where did that come from? I didn't even know that was in there. It's really powerful.
One question I like to use for those moments, like, where did that come from, is learning to ask the question, is it true? Like, is it true? Is it mostly true? Is it 100% all the time true? Like, it's like taking a thought to court and just being like, all right, we need to face this sucker and ask the question. And then why do I believe it's true? It comes later, but just take it to task, these thoughts that we think. Like, is this always true? No, always and never are words that, the moon and the sun always rise. The tide always goes in and out, but very rarely does anything else always and never happen.
Exactly. And just, starting to spot that language that you use. It really changes everything. And I must admit that I am really annoying about that, because my husband will say, I'll be about to make lunch and it's like, do you want to have a sandwich? Or maybe I'll have a sandwich. I'm like, well, I'm making it now, so it's too late for maybe. Are you having one or aren't you having one? I don't want to know what you might be doing. I need to know what you are doing. So I do become a bit of a ninja about words. So sometimes I have to make myself switch it off, or it's just going to be an argument.
I love the whole idea of being a word ninja. I feel that. It's like, well, that's not what I meant. I'm like, well, that's what you said,
I'm never like, never, ever. Oh, well, there was that one time. Yeah, exactly. But I also love this idea of taking it to court. Will it stand up in court when people start objecting and asking for the evidence? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because no, it probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if I were going to think about the word Grittitude, I think the first step of Grittitude would be becoming aware of my own culpability in the life that I'm living and the choices I'm making in the direction it's headed. I think it takes Grittitude sometimes just to do that.
Yeah, completely. I mean, the book's in 3 parts, and the first part is really about that awareness, and having that awareness that actually maybe it is me, maybe I can, by just changing me, I can actually change my experience of the whole world. And then the second part is about, this messy bit in the middle, that actually when we start to change, all neuroscience shows us we want to move back.
Yeah.
We want to get back to the status quo. We don't really like change. It's a bit itchy. It makes us feel uncomfortable. So you've got to just keep going through. And then the last bit is about looking forward and setting those goals and those dreams, and keeping it going, and not thinking, okay, well, you might make a change now, but in a year's time you're ready for the next change. And because things just move on all the time, so it's just keep asking yourself the questions that challenge your thinking so that you don't get stuck.
I think that good questions is absolutely one of the greatest tools.
Yeah.
The questions that we ask ourselves. I think we're probably better at asking good questions to our friends.
Yeah.
And maybe we should be listening and apply the same, apply the medicine on our own life, not just everybody else's.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to sort of like jump in with the questions and to have that insight with somebody else because you've got that distance. And with yourself, we often just stop, challenging ourselves, or we'll ask a question, but we'll believe the excuse that we come up with as an answer. And when you sort of think, okay, well, is that really the truth, or is it just a convenient way of thinking about it? So yeah. And certainly, you can just sit and ask yourself the questions, but that's where, coaches, why we have a business, is because it can be more powerful when someone else asks you it. In many ways, just because if we suspect that the answer that someone's giving is an excuse, is just a story that they're telling themselves, then we'll challenge it and say, well, where's that coming from? How do you know? Whereas, as you said earlier, when we make things up ourselves, we actually look for evidence that supports it. We want to prove that we're right. So we don't go looking for evidence that challenges our thinking. We want to be right.
Yeah. And this is the thing. We are right no matter what we choose because we make it right.
Yeah.
Right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So then it's back to that adage, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? You can prove yourself right and say, I can't do that, I'll never be successful. Okay, then, well, you fail and prove yourself right and just sit there miserable, or prove yourself wrong and have amazing success. What would you rather choose? So yeah, it's always like, that's the question. It's like, it's okay to keep that belief, but is that belief serving you, or is it limiting you and getting in the way of having what you want instead?
On paper, it seems like such an obvious answer, doesn't it, Jacqui? Like, it's like, well, of course I don't want to be a failure and a loser, right?
Yeah.
But then we stop ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why, like you said, having a coach, having someone outside of the story, right? You're talking about Grittitude is learning to write your own story. Well, we do already have a story. So you're really talking about taking that story back and writing a new one, writing the one that's more in alignment with who you are. And maybe at some point that story was in alignment in some way, shape, or form. Like you were saying, there was some good benefit. It might be a horrible story, but it fits something positive somewhere. And I think that once we become aware that there is a story, and then we get to take it to court and go, well, is that true? Do I want it to be true? What would I rather be true about me and my life and the way that I show up in the world? And I think it's so powerful. And I think back to the word Grittitude, it's the perfect word because none of this is easy, right?
Well, we say in the book, we didn't say it's easy, but it shouldn't be that hard. It's it's as easy or as hard as you make it, because it's like how hard do you want to hang on to those beliefs that aren't serving you? Because you can't hang on to them and keep trying to prove yourself right, or you could at the first pass, at the first question, you could just go, yeah, I'm making that up. That's not true at all. And throughout the book, in every single chapter, we've included stories. So some of the stories are my personal stories, some are Kay's, some are clients that we've worked with, so that rather than it just being the theory, there's an example to apply it to. And the hope is that people reading it will go, I can see that example, that's similar to something I've been through, and can help sort of to identify with it and see how it would fit for them.
And there's the positive power of stories right there, right? Like the stories in our head are not always positive, but when we read somebody else's story, we're inspired by that, which is really cool. Now, if you had to give 3 kind of anchor points today, ways of encouraging the listeners around the idea of gratitude and learning to live a life that has gratitude as a core value, what would those be?
The three key things throughout the whole of the book is questions, choice, and story. So it's about asking yourselves the questions, then discovering that you have a choice. In every situation, you've got a choice. We acknowledge that the reason that sometimes it looks like you haven't got a choice is when both of the choices aren't easy. You know, if you've got a choice between taking the risk of getting a new job or staying in the job you don't enjoy, well, that's still a choice, but there's not an easy choice. But once you recognize that you are making a choice, and then, yeah, how do you change the story that you're telling yourself? And, you know, with the job situation, you could think, okay, do I need to change the job, or do I need to change that attitude to the job? Do I need to find the fun? Or even if you've got a job that you hate, if you recognize that what really drives you is supporting your family and having security, then you can go off to work to do a job you don't enjoy, but because you know that this is the thing that's giving you that security, that's supporting your family, it's still driving your purpose. That's where you can still find that passion for it and go, okay, well, I don't love the job, but this is enabling me to have the life I want. And so you can still have that right attitude towards it.
Fantastic. So how can people find you, Jacqui, and how can people find your co-author and your partner in this Grittitude, Kay Woodburn?
Okay, so Kay's business is called Gritty People, so you can find grittypeople.co.uk. My business is Second Cup of Tea, also .co.uk, but we'd love you to find the book. So the book is available on Amazon. So it's available in the US as well. I don't know the exact price. It's about 10 UK pounds. So I don't know quite what the equivalent is these days for dollars. But the Kindle edition is only 99 pence. So it'll be about $1, because we really are passionate about this idea of bringing the gritty attitude to everyone. And so we didn't want price to be a barrier. So for that Kindle edition, you know, it's literally going to be about $1, and people can access it and read it on their device. So Grittitude, choose your own life story. Find it on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, Jacqui, I want to thank you so much for showing up today, for sharing your passion around the idea of people living a life that brings them joy, that's more in alignment with who they are today, to rewrite their story, to practice this idea of gratitude. It's just been a lot of fun, and it's been a real joy to see your passion and the heart that you have behind this idea of gratitude, and just that you're out there trying to make a difference. And I really want to honor that journey that you and Kay are taking together to make a difference in something that you see, to make other people's lives that much more vibrant and satisfying. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And and hello to everybody out there that's listening. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Friends, today, if you find yourself on a podcast, just head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 330. I will have the links to Jacqui and her website, Kay, her website, and the title of the book so that you can find it easily. If you happen to be on YouTube, just look down below. The links are literally right there for you. It's the shortest distance to find the solution of gratitude in your life. Today, I have been talking with Jacqui Flavell. She's a life coach, a mentor, and she's the co-author with Kay Woodburn of the book Grittitude, Choose Your Own Life Story. Friends, this is one of those conversations that it may seem simple, and in some ways it is, but you're hearing it and it's touching your heart and it's tickling your tummy. And I would really encourage you to lean into this idea of gratitude, this idea of becoming aware of how you're speaking to yourself, being willing to step out and challenge those beliefs and write a new story for yourselves. Because one of the things that I know that Jacqui and I would agree upon is every single person has something wonderful to do in their life, with their life, and through their life. And it takes courage to trust that truth. But I promise you, if you challenge us on this, you will prove that you have something within you that you haven't tapped into yet that's going to bring so much richness to your life and the lives of those around you. So we encourage you to get a copy of the book Grittitude. If you have a Kindle, spend $1, sit down and read it. Remember the advice to sit and pause when it feels a little overwhelming and take some time to think about what it is that it is, what's churning in your heart, what's churning in your mind. Hold a space for yourself. Maybe get a book club together. Why not? It never hurts to do things in community when we're trying to grow and change, because it's good to link arms with other people who love us and want the best for us. So friends, again, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that this has been impactful for you. And if it has, please take the time to share this message with all of your friends. And we thank you for sharing this message. And I look forward to sharing more inspirational people, stories, and messages with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.